My dear wife Mary, cold as usual. Mary was there with her legs crossed, you know, and soon be my turn, soon be my turn. So, well, he said, okay, Mary, he said, what would you like on yours headstone? And she said, on my headstone, geez, I want these words. Besides me lies my darling husband, stiff at last. Anyhow, ladies and gentlemen, if us speakers are very long, of course most of you people will be stiff, I guess. But anyhow, I would like to just say a few more words. I'd like to thank the committee very much for the very kind invitation for my wife and me to attend our banquet, your banquet here tonight. I would like to welcome all the out-of-town guests to our beautiful town of Bishop Falls, and I'm glad that you decided to have the thing here, like some I believe Kevin said, it was an ideal spot to have it because it was such a great railway town, Bishop Falls, and I'm proud that you people decided to come to Bishop Falls. I'd like to welcome you here. I hope you've enjoyed your weekend thus far, and I hope the rest of the weekend is just as enjoyable, and I'd love to be a fly on some of those tables tonight when the dance starts, to hear some of the stories that are going to be told by you people when you get together. So, I'd make a fortune writing a book. But, so again, welcome to Bishop Falls. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you to the committee for inviting me. And I'd like to bring greetings on behalf of my colleagues on council and myself and all the people in Bishop Falls. I'd like to welcome you and thank you for coming. And I hope you have a very safe journey home whenever you go home tonight or tomorrow, whenever it is. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, thank you very much, Mayor Rose. Before we get to our next gentleman who is going to be the guest speaker, I have that much trouble here with my, I don't know what to call it. I got greetings here, and I got jokes here, and I got, yeah, a new secretary. Mr. Smith went and got himself a new secretary. I'd say Mr. Penny went and got himself a new secretary. Yeah, that's it, Mr. Penny. So the secretary was young, sweet, and polite. So when she was leaving the room, she said, "Oh, Mr. Smith, did you know that your barrack store is open?" He didn't understand what she was talking about. He said, the barrack store. So anyway, he was going around down to Mom. I looked down, sure enough, zipper down. Pulled up the zipper. He said, I guess I'll have a bit of fun with Miss Smith. So I called her in, he said, by the way, he said, when you saw my barrack store down this morning, did you see a young soldier standing at attention? The secretary was quite witty. Well, I know, sir, she said. All I saw was a little disabled veteran sitting on two old duffel bags. Gentlemen, back to the secretary. This next gentleman, I'm just going to introduce him as a former mayor and the son of a railway worker, the guest speaker for this evening, Mr. George Saunders. Mr. Saunders.
Well, tonight, I'd like for you to allow me to introduce my comments by quoting from that wonderful piece of Newfoundland railway literature by W.J. Chafe, the one I've been working on the railroad. I'm sure you've all seen it or read it, in which he says, and I quote, this is at the end of his book, "In recent years I have been saddened by the manner in which the railway has been neglected and its role in transportation reduced. The Newfoundland Railway was a way of life for many of us, And this way of life is vanishing as surely as other aspects of our culture. Now, this is the theme that I had to speak to you about this evening. There are a few humorous items, and I'm sure many of you will identify with them, but there are also some very serious comments that I would like to address. And those who are in the railway, who dealt with me during the 1980s and who put all kinds of nice labels on me, I think one word was fiery, another one was hot-tempered, another one was, if you got red hair, well, the temper goes with it. I was known as a bit of a, I guess Fabe Kennedy knows this more than anybody else. I know Bill Barron reminded me earlier this evening of a comment I made to Ron Messenger one time when he was manager. We met him at the Mount Peyton Hotel for a meeting, and he introduced himself as Ron Messenger. I said, yes, we know you're a messenger. We know why you're sent down here. And the best thing you can do is go right on back where you came from. Now, that was a very poor way for me to react, but I was so fed up with railroad managers at that point that that was the only thing I could say to him. We managed to get over that, and we had some very productive meetings afterwards. But when, in 1988, I had an opportunity to go into St. Pat's home and meet with Bill Chafe. And we had a great afternoon together. And he mentioned so many names to me, so many fellows, that I had met through my father, living on Station Road. We didn't know, my poor old mother didn't know each day whom Dad was going to bring home for dinner. There'd be always somebody, whatever train got in that morning, there'd be somebody on it that ultimately ended up for dinner at our home. And I'm sure all of you recall many of your own colleagues, some, I guess, who are here this evening, some who are not, who knew Mike Saunders. Mike was the clerk here in Bishop's Falls. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm his son, believe it or not. He was a little tiny man, and I'm not very little and tiny. But those great days when I was with Bill Chafe, I was remembering the 50s and 60s and how great a role they played in my life with the railway. And he was recalling the glory days of the 40s. I'm sure some of you recall those real busy days of the 40s during the war years in particular. The railway has always been special to me, and I think probably one of the saddest days of my life was when we were brought into the Radisson Plaza Hotel. I'm sure Oliver recalls this as well, and told, of course, that the railway was closing down. I don't think we were shocked at the news. I think we had anticipated it. I think what was most distressing was the fact that he actually had the gall to do it. But the great days here, for me as a child growing up, was looking at Ellie Cook in the shunter, going back and forth the yard there as we trudged off to school. And also the freight shed with Martin Cook. Still see him now. One of the biggest men I think I can ever remember when I was a little fellow. And so many others. There's so many. Growing up on Station Road was like growing up with the railway. It was part of it. Because all the families that lived there, the Kellys, the Levines, the Antons, Gales, the Cannings, there's so many, I just can't remember them all, but the railway and Station Road was all one. And all our memories are basically beautiful. I love going on the train looking for pop bottles. And myself and every other kid on Station Road would wait for the passenger train to come in so we could board it, run and get empty pop bottles and get off and sell them to Gaydens, which had a bottling plant there on Station Road. Great days and great memories. And also that we get a chance to see the people who were traveling on the train at the time. But those who came to our home, I think, were probably those that meant an extra special meaning to me. Jerry Scapeland, whom I will never forget, a very dear friend of my father, and Ralph Balsam from Claremont, an engineer who spent many, many days with us. And living next door to Jack Kelly, I mean, how could you help but not love the railway? He always told the truth. Is he here tonight? I haven't seen him. He's here. He told more stories, and we had more fun with that fellow. I remember one time in particular, he was just coming off one of the trains, and we were playing soccer in front of his brother Cyril's home. I'll never forget this because he took the soccer ball and he used to always love to show us how strong he was kicking the ball as opposed to us, because he used to play on the Bishop Hall soccer team. So he decided he was going to kick the ball over the roof of Cyril's house to the other side. And he did, okay? And then when he got on the other side, he picked up the ball and he kicked it back to us again, on the other, back again. And we were absolutely amazed at how the man could actually, kick a soccer ball over a two-story house. And he did do it. I guess the glory days of the railway were the war years. Well, I wasn't around for that. I wasn't born till after it was over. But the dying days of the railway, from 1969 to 1988, I really was, I guess, around for all of it, and they contain some very sad memories. But there was a few funny ones. When a young fella starts trying to get his first beer before he's at the right age to get that first beer, he gets a bit nervous when he's going into clubs and he hasn't got the right ID or anything. Well, I hold the dubious distinction of being kicked out of the club car on the railway. The only club I was ever kicked out of in my life. But I remember we were traveling back and forth to university. I think it was around 68. And we tried to get into club cars so we could buy a beer. And, of course, we didn't look, 21. You had to be 21 back then. We didn't look 21, but we tried to get in anyway. And me, being very naive, decided that I was going to try it as well. And when I went in, one of the fellows working in the club car said, "That's Mike Sanders' son from Bishop Falls. He's not old enough to drink, get him out of here." So that was it. I said, well, no good me trying to get on the train because they all know each other. You're one big family, and I can tell tonight that your family is still very much united. And as I think it was your president said at the beginning, they will never destroy the memory of the railroader. They might have destroyed the railway in Newfoundland, but they will never destroy the memory of the railroader. When I was mayor here in the 80s, and we knew that the railway was facing certain destruction, we felt that it was necessary for us to fight very, very hard to try to find out the real reason that it was being tampered with. I couldn't believe that any government would actually take part of its transportation infrastructure and destroy it. And I kept being told, one manager after another kept telling me, don't worry, the railway will always be here. We're just going to take some steps to improve it or to modernize it. Okay? This is what he kept telling me. And finally I remember walking up to a fellow named Peter Clark one time and I said, "What promotion is waiting for you when you go back?" Now that's how bad it got. It got to the point where we didn't trust one manager. Not one. And it ended up that in the end they called us into this meeting in the Radisson Plaza, and they tried to placate us with, I believe it was a development fund of around $6 or $7 million to try to, improve our economy after the railway was gone. Well, with everything else that's ever happening in Newfoundland since that fateful day, the 1990s have certainly not been very positive in terms of economic development in our province. Between the demise of the fishery, the destruction of the railway, and everything else that's been a downward trend, we've had quite a rough ride. Hopefully, things will get better. But I don't think we were all destined to become entrepreneurs as we were asked to be in the early 1990s. And I certainly don't think we're all going to be tourists or open up tourist lodges. The destruction of the railway, I believe, was a terrible mistake for Newfoundland and Labrador. Positive thinking would have set a course for modernization of the system. It was part of the transportation infrastructure of this province. It was allowed to deteriorate, and it ultimately was destroyed by people who I think lacked vision and lacked foresight. And now, as was pointed to me by Bill Barron earlier this evening, he said, what happened in Newfoundland in the 80s is now happening in Eastern Canada as the 1990s unfold. He said, even Moncton is starting to feel the pinch of the ultimate destruction of the railway. But if there had been positive thinking applied to the railway, I believe sincerely that modernization would have enhanced the jobs that were always there, created new ones, increased the efficiency of our transportation system, and preserved our place as part of the Canadian national landscape. If they keep chopping the railway any further, they won't be able to use the words Canadian national because it will be false advertising. It just won't extend from sea to sea. Okay, Canadian national, I think Newfoundland is still part of the Canadian structure, and therefore, as a national system, it should have a very prominent place in our province, and it doesn't have it. Of course, all this thinking is hindsight, because we've lost that part of our heritage, and even more significantly, we've lost a part of our infrastructure which was not adequately replaced. We haven't got a transportation system today. I don't think we have a transportation system today that's capable of looking after those trucks that keep rolling across our internet of safety for those of us who have to travel in an association of people with a part of our history which has color, class, and enduring character. How many of us in this room had breakfast with white linen on a Newfie bullet, with those thick rashers of bacon? And I can still remember, and I'm sure you guys can as well, the most beautiful breakfast I ever ate in my life. And when I look back on the beautiful memory of that train, leaving Bishop's Falls at 9 o'clock at night and arriving in St. John's, not in time for my Math 101 class on Monday morning. Usually it was an hour late. So I flunked Math 101 my first year at university. I can see why now. But I dearly loved it. And those whom I travel with, the boys that I went to high school with, the girls that went to Littledale, and everybody else, because the university train, we used to call it, the Sunday night train was the university train, those of us who traveled on it, it was great. You got no sleep, spent half the night on a break, and the other half of the night making jokes. In Bishop's Falls were like, and this is whom I identify with mostly, they were like a group of a family that was very, very special. Every one of them seemed to, there was a happy look on everybody's faces when the railway was booming here. And if you grew up on Station Road, you grew up with the smell of the railway, the sounds of the railway, which you never heard. I don't think I ever lost a night's sleep, even though trains were rolling back and forth. We just became immune to the sound of it. And we certainly miss it. And my youngest son, Mark, little boy, I remember when the last few trains were running, he loved the trains. And where we live now, it's just below Diamond Crossing. I'm sure all of you are familiar with Diamond Crossing. He used to run over to it. When he'd see when the last few trains were running down, he used to run over to look at the trains going by. And I used to be always afraid that he was going to run smack into one, because he was so active as a little boy. But he now, very often, he still has quite a love for railways. And it's too bad that my generation and my children's generation will probably have to travel very far afield just to see a train and to appreciate the value of one. But the memories of all the trips that you took, very first holiday I ever had in my life was going on a caboose on a freight train with Ralph Balsam, the engineer, and I think Ron Levine was cooking a big feed in the back of the caboose for us. And we went to Claremont. And I'll never forget that, even though I was just a young boy at the time. But for those of you who have the memories of the Gaff Topsails, and I've heard infamous stories of the Gaff Topsails, where the snow was higher than the train. And I've heard so many stories and seen at times when the plow used to come in, the rotary would come in. The special trains that traveled on 24 May weekend, Christmas, George Robinson told me some lovely stories about the trains at Christmas, but I don't think I'll tell them all here. Apparently, this is in the days of the. Just one I'll mention, George. The days when you used to you had to have a book to buy a bottle of rum or something, a liquor book or something, and anyway, it was kind of hard to get a bit of liquor around here. But anyway, George was bringing. He told me one time he was bringing in some bottles for some fellows from Corner Room. Every one of them wanted to have a drink out of their bottle, just one drink out of their bottle. But see, he had something like about 14 or 15 bottles. So by the time he had one drink out of every one of them, he wasn't in very good shape to go home. And the caboose stories are even, I think, more exciting than some of the stories of the other runs that they had. The boil-ups. The memories of all of you that you have, which are yours to treasure, and which, and I want to throw this out to you, are yours to share with those of us who never had the honor and the privilege of serving on the railway. This is the railway of the past, and the challenge goes out to the towns where railway life was the economic heart of the community to establish either museums or archives, which will not only preserve this important part of the past for our people, but will also attract others to come and appreciate the many aspects of a way of life in Newfoundland during a major portion of this century, the latter portion of the last century. The initiatives for such a trust must come from the community itself, and from those who have the time as well as the sense of commitment to dedicate themselves to accomplish this challenge. Opportunities still exist for assistance and support, even though there are those among us who claim that the day of grants from government is past. It's not. They're still there. You just have to push a little harder and find them, but they're out there. There's still money available. The establishment of museums of railway heritage can be accomplished with a positive approach. Just look at Lewisport, what they're after doing. It's fantastic. But if I may be permitted to be a little personal, we've certainly fallen a little bit behind here at Bishop's Falls. And so tonight I'd like to issue a challenge that we launch some initiative here as well. But we need, of course, the full support of the town if we're ever going to get anywhere with it. The attitude must be positive, and the attitude must be forward. And if we do that, we can have a chance to preserve the history of one of the greatest parts of Newfoundland's heritage of the 20th century. This challenge is vested with our community leaders as well as with our retired railroaders to show some real leadership and to initiate action to establish these symbols as an important part of our history. Tonight is yours to enjoy, to celebrate. As the mayor pointed out, he'd like to be a fly. Well, I'm too big to be a fly. I'm hoping that I'll get a chance during the evening to talk to many of you and probably reminisce for some. I see so many familiar faces. I hope to get an opportunity to meet with you. But the railway was held together with ties. You're here tonight with ties to each other in something that is very common to all of your lives. Maintain your ties. The ties of the railway workers will never be broken in this province. You are living proof of this. I wish you all good health, happiness always, the very best of luck, and have a great trip here to Bishop's. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, George, for a job well done. Citizen of Bishop Falls, by the name of Harry Party. And he's here tonight, and he's a member of the Pensioners Association of the Southwest Coast. And he asked me, would I like to read this poem? So here's the poem Harry wrote. My name is Harry Party. A boiler maker was my trade. I worked with the CN for 19 years, and many good friends I made. When my job was finished here, to Port of Basque I came. I worked on the William Carson and did operate a heavy lift crane. With CN Marine for another 22 years, and this I can proudly say, it was the best part of my life, and I'm proud I'm here today. I was born and raised in Bishop Falls, in the heart of Newfoundland. I'm proud to say I'm here today, and I'll gladly shake your hand. I'd rather be home for this union than I would be for come home year. I'm a retired CN pensioner, and I've been for 14 years. It makes me proud to see you all, and hope our retirement will be long. May all our days be happy, just like was written in the song. And as we all journey down the path of life, and our work on earth is done, all our days will be remembered, like the setting of the sun. I think that deserves a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, sir, again very much. Real nice job. There's where I hold yourself. That was my secretary.
He's going to do a skit now.
That way. I got a lot of stuff to do. Am I too close to this microphone? Okay. Bonner's going to be my fireman now. I got more seniority than Bob, so I'm going on the engineer side. My late uncle, Bill Hammond, done one time, one Ash Wednesday. We were all home, only young fellas. My father was a section with a D&D company. There was 10 or 12 youngsters. So Ash Wednesday, when you put stashes on your head to remind us all that we're only dust. So my father used to make home brew.
That's what that means.
And my mother was Bill Hammond's sister. So every morning when Bill would come out with a switch engine, he'd come in and get a couple of bottles of Dad's home brew before he'd go home. So this Ash Wednesday was a big storm, man. So Bill come in, he said, Peggy, he said, don't let the kids go to Mass this morning. He said, to get ashes. It was Ash Wednesday, raging blizzard out. He said, I got some ashes. I was down to church, he said, early this morning. Mom said, were you? Oh, yes, he said. So he took a bit of brown paper out of his overalls, he all full of coal dust and everything else. He said, here. So my poor mother went around, put the sign of the cross on all our foreheads. The guy, she said, that's great. She said, y'all got the ashes for Ash Wednesday. Bill drank 2 more bottles of beer. He said, Peggy, he said, that's ashes out of the steam engine, he said. My mother said, you son of a bitch. She said, you grabbed the broom, she cleaned over the head and out through the door.